I'm so excited to bring to you Microbiome Minutes. My name is Whitney Kell. I'm a certified coach, and it's an honor and a privilege to have one of the most brilliant minds in gut health with us today. Kiran Krishnan has over 15 years in research and development in molecular medicine and microbiology, and in developing and selling products to the health professional market. I think you've done over 50 lectures this year already, Kiran, to health professionals, and you're working and training with doctors and lecturing on how to help physicians learn more about gut health. And it's really exciting information. And I'm going to turn it over to my coach, Greg, for our interview today.
Thanks, Whitney. And thanks, Kiran. It's going to be exciting to hear from you. You know, when we started, Whitney and I started health coaching 17 years ago, there was zero awareness around gut health. There was no talk of microbiome. And this has been a huge, huge revelation to the healthcare industry. And it's becoming more and more important to not only treating diseases, but preventing them. And we're really excited to talk to you today. Let's start with what is the Microbiome Minute. This is going to be a series of interviews that we're going to break down this gut health topic into how it affects our body's systems in different aspects. But if you could just help the viewers understand what is the microbiome in general, and then we'll break it down and go into some of the other topics.
Yeah, so first, thank you guys so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to join you. I'm always excited when I get a chance to talk science to any sort of audience, because this information is so paramount to health and wellness. So over the last about 13 or 14 years, there are literally thousands of researchers in hundreds and hundreds of labs across the world that have been studying a topic that really redefines what a human being is, right? We are just now starting to understand how we function. And that's really mind-boggling to think that we've had hundreds of years of medical science and research and advancements in biological technology, and yet we were looking at less than 10% of the human function. Right, so let me explain that for a second. The microbiome, the term you use, which actually encompasses all of the microbes that live in and on our body and all of their genetic elements, right? We're coming to understand that those outweigh the human system, meaning the human cells, human DNA, anywhere from 10 to 1 to 150 to 1. So let's look at cells. We have about 10 trillion cells that make up the human body. Everybody knows what a cell is. It's like a little biological unit. We are multicellular organisms, meaning we're made up of lots and lots of these cells kind of put together, right? Now, the human system has about 10 trillion cells. We've got over 100 trillion bacteria cells that live in and on us. So 10 times more bacteria cells than human cells. Now, we also know about our DNA, right? Most people think that the DNA really dictates how you function, how you look, and so on. It does code for your hair color and eye color and, you know, structural things, your height and so on. But for the most part, the human system only has about 22,000 functional genes. Now, that may sound like a lot, but when you compare that to a rice plant, for example, or an earthworm, which we would consider to be very low order creatures, meaning they're very underdeveloped organisms, they have almost twice the amount of DNA that we do, right? A rice plant has almost 40,000 genes. We only have 22,000. So how is it that we function in such a high capacity? How are we at the top of the evolutionary ladder? How are we at the top of the food chain? Well, as it turns out, we've got over 3.5 million bacterial genes in our system, right? So we have 150 times more bacterial DNA in our system than human DNA. And that bacterial DNA codes for over 90% of all of the activity that we do every day that makes us human.
So
digested food.
So if people have this philosophy, this fear of bacteria, this fear of germs, this fear of bugs, and they don't understand that these guys are our partners. They're like 90% of this system and how it works together. It's a paradigm shift for understanding what's going on internally, and also, like you said, the genetic, how we're looking at genetics. We're going to have actually a whole topic where we talk about genetics and epigenetics later. But for now, just for those people that are understanding this, the gut health issue, how important is it? What is the role of those microbes, those little bacteria guys that are our partners that live inside our body? What are they trying to do for us?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we are really essentially made up of bacteria, right? I define a human as a walking, talking rainforest. We are a really significant and complex ecology. Imagine a complex rainforest with thousands of different species of plants and trees and animals. And the way the rainforest functions is through harmony, right? All of those little organisms and microenvironments, whether it's the base of the rainforest, the middle part of the rainforest, or the canopy, all of those environments have to function in harmony and balance in order for the rainforest to sustain itself. That's exactly the same thing that occurs in the human body. So we have all of these little microecologies throughout our body. Our skin has a different ecology than our eyeballs, than our urogenital tracts, like the vaginal canal, than our lungs, than our gut. All of those things have different bacteria that function differently and support those systems. But the communication between those microbes and those ecology are what bring about harmony and balance in the human system. The gut contains the vast majority of those bacteria. Think of the gut as the central command system for where most of the bacteria exist, and then they control so much of our hormone system, our immune system, our neurological system. All of that stuff occurs in the gut. So about 80-90% of all of the microbes that live in and on your body are in the gut. About 80% of all of your immune tissue in the body is in the gut. Virtually everything that you're exposed to goes through the gut in some way or the other. And so the gut is a central command system. We're now starting to see that vast majority of chronic illnesses can be traced back to some ecological dysfunction in the gut, right? So that's really surprising to people. Like if you have rheumatoid arthritis and your knee really hurts and gets inflamed all the time, that knee pain and that inflammation comes from the gut. If you have a parent or somebody in your family suffering from Alzheimer's, a disease of the brain, that Alzheimer's started in the gut. Parkinson's, heart disease, diabetes, most forms of cancer, all of these things start in the gut. That's a hard thing for people to wrap their head around, but that's because the gut controls over 90% of our biological function.
And it's also been known that, for history, we've always talked about, I got that feeling in my gut, something's wrong. It's that instinctual. There's actually a brain center. It's kind of like a whole nother nervous center, a communication center, like the heart is considered a brain, the mind is considered, now the gut's being considered a brain. So it's important for the communication, but it's also these little helpers that go out. And when they find an issue, the communication, the immune system says, hey, go get them. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mentioned earlier that about 80% of our immune system exists in our gut. That's the immune tissue. There's a whole system called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue or the mucosal-associated lymphoid tissue. Those are the big words to explain all of the immune tissue that exists in the gut. Now, what do I mean by immune tissue? Well, these are the various glands and cells that really stimulate your immune system to kind of proliferate in different ways to go out and defend your body against invading pathogens like viruses and bad bacteria, parasites, and so on. Most of those originate in the gut, and those are in constant communication with all of the microbes that call your gut home. So imagine all of this immune tissue in your intestinal lining is covered in a sea of bacteria. And that important communication between the bacteria and the immune tissue dictates how well your immune system works. So think of your gut as base camp for your soldier cells that are going around your body, roaming about and defending you. Your body is your territory. That's your system. And the base camp is in the gut. The communication between the bacteria and your own immune cells is a general telling the soldiers what to do. The general, believe it or not, is our bacteria, right? We can't defend ourselves without the information provided to us by the bacteria in our gut. That's really hard to believe for a lot of people. But that's why this whole microbiome science is the biggest topic in science going on right now, because what we've come to find out is as cool as we thought we were, what we've actually done is outsource most of our function to bacteria that live in our system. That's mind-boggling, right? Because we always thought of bacteria as bad. All of the Clorox company will have you think that killing 99.9% of microbes is a really good thing on any product. But for the most part, 99.9999% of all bacteria we come in contact with are either benign or beneficial. Less than 0.0001% of bacteria are actually harmful or pathogenic. And most of those bacteria are only harmful and pathogenic when there's imbalance in the system. Right, so the balance and the ability for us to act as humans, function as humans, and defend ourselves all hang on the ability of the gut to communicate with the rest of our immune system. So think of our gut as the generals that are giving the plans to the soldiers that are going out and defending our bodies. And it could be defending us against viruses, other bacteria, parasites, toxins that are coming in from our environment. It's up to the immune system to neutralize those mold toxins, and then also defending us against rogue immune cells that cause autoimmune disease. And now there's hundreds of autoimmune disease, whereas 30, 40 years ago there were maybe 20, 25 that have been defined. Now we've got, I think, over 120. So all of those functions are dependent on those generals in our gut. Those are the bacteria that live there. So it's imperative for us to understand that and then design our lifestyles around supporting those generals, or our soldiers are going to be completely clueless. They'll have no plans, they have no map, they don't know who the enemy is, and they don't have any equipment. They would just be sitting around at base camp not knowing what to do. And so let's support our generals, our bacterial generals.
Wow, that's fantastic, Kiran. Yes, we all need to have generals in there that are ready to go and fight the war of keeping us healthy. So thank you. I think this is going to be eye-opening and revolutionary to some people that aren't aware of how important it is for gut health, because for years we've been using antibiotics. Will you just share, as we wrap this up, what your definition was, the difference between antibiotics and probiotics?
Yeah, and in fact, the terms themselves are defined. Antibiotic actually is defined as anti-life. The ending biotic actually means life in Latin, I believe. So antibiotic means anti-life. Probiotics means for life, literally. Now, not to bash antibiotics across the board, because they are important. They do save lives when used properly. But, even the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, estimates that at least 50% of antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary because they're being prescribed for viral infections or other things that the antibiotics don't actually help with. And anytime you use those types of antibiotics, they're killing all of your generals. Right? So there's studies that show that these really important generals that you have in your body that are giving not only your immune system, but your endocrine system, so your system that produces all the hormones that you need to stay in balance and function as a human, the system that produces all the enzymes that you need to digest your food and assimilate the nutrients. All of those things are dictated by and directed by these generals. You take a course of antibiotics, you knock those generals down by 99%. From a single course of antibiotics. Now, of course, if you need the course, you have a severe bacterial infection, it'll save your life. But for the vast majority of uses of antibiotics or just antimicrobials that are so prevalent, all of the nonstop hand sanitizing and sanitizing of our environment, the use of preservatives in food, all of the Roundup and all of the herbicides and pesticides, those are all antibiotics. All of the chlorine and fluoride that's in your drinking water, everything around you is an antimicrobial or antibiotic, which means antibacterial or anti-life. It's about time we start adding more for life components back to our system. We are a living, breathing system. We're not a sterile, dead entity, right? Like I mentioned before, we are a walking, talking rainforest. We are an ecology. The more we disrupt that ecology, the higher our risk for disease.
Wow. Wow, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have these microbiome minutes with you, Kiran. We're going to continue these conversations and expand topics. Clearly, you're an expert. Clearly, you have great metaphors also to help people understand and to deliver information that is going to be probably revolutionary for many people. And, you know, for me, it's the kids. You know, we take antibiotics when we're kids, and that's what parents are doing the best they can based on our medical system that's currently in place. So I really feel like we're going to make a difference with educating the people who are trying to be healthy. So thanks for equipping our generals.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. I mean, we got to get to know our generals, right? We didn't know they were in there doing all the stuff that they do. So we were inadvertently killing them because we had a false notion of what a human structure was. You know, you brought up kids. Just to illustrate how important this one little change in frame of mind can be, studies show that households that use chlorine-based cleaners on a regular basis to sterilize a home, which is what most Americans think of as a clean home, those homes tend to have kids with much higher incidence rates of immune dysfunctions like allergies, asthma, viral infections, and so on. Right? None of us want that for our kids. None of us intend that for our kids. And we have this misconception that if we sterilize at home, if we have that chlorine kind of smell in our home, it indicates it's clean and healthy in some way. In fact, it indicates a dead, disease-prone home.
Wow.
Right? Microbes and living organisms, we are in constant osmosis with the outside environment. And if we prevent our interaction with the outside environment, which is all of the microbes that are surrounding us, we will inevitably push our way to disease. So just that one tidbit. So from all of these microbiome minutes that we're going to do to really get people to understand very specific topics as it relates to the microbiome, if they just stop using the chlorine-based cleaners on such a regular basis. I mean, clean your toilets every once in a while with the chlorine-based cleaner. That's fine. But you don't need to sterilize your home. That in itself can reduce a whole bunch of incidents of asthma, allergies, all of the things that our kids suffer from. You know, it can be that simple.
Well, we're translating it for the public from Kiran Krishnan, the scientist. It's all about microbiome minutes and microbiome gut health. Thank you so much, Kiran. Look forward to our next one. So stay tuned, everyone. We'll have some more information and incredible awarenesses and revolutions around gut health on the next episode. Thanks, Krishnan.
Thanks, Kiran.
Thanks.